the reality was I always knew right from wrong.
Yeah.
I always knew that it wasn't what was supposed to be for me.
Yeah.
And that foundation that you have as a Christian, I've learned also plays a very integral role in your rock bottom.
Yeah.
And due to the presence of God in my life, my threshold in which I was willing to go past was a lot more shallow.
Welcome to Stories I Didn't Tell Last Sunday. I'm Doug McAllister for Journey Fellowship Church, and today my guest is Jimmy Sharp. Jimmy is a leader here at Celebrate Recovery for Journey, but he has an incredible testimony of how Jesus Christ has totally revolutionized his life. So, Jimmy, I want you to just tell us your story. You can go back as far as you want to. I know in your day job that you're an adjuster, so you travel all over, especially for hurricanes. How busy are you during the hurricane season?
Usually we're looking at anywhere from 3,000 to 5,000 cars as a result of a...
What?
Yeah, Hurricane Ida was right at 5,000 cars.
And how big is your staff to process 5,000 claims? How many people?
We went through it with 10 people. So
That's unbelievable.
It's a journey.
Yeah.
We definitely don't look forward to hurricanes every day.
How long have you been an adjuster?
I've been an adjuster since 2008.
Wow. And you cover the whole state of Louisiana?
Yes, whole state.
Well,
yes.
yeah,
My team covers the whole state, and I cover them. So.
Yeah, right. Man, what a massive job. Have you always been in insurance and adjusting?
Well, I started out actually as a freshman in high school. I started out in the body shop industry.
Yeah.
As a freshman in high school, I wrecked my mother's Cadillac. And
didn't we all?
Yes. I wrecked her Cadillac, so as a punishment for wrapping around a tree, I had to build her a new one. And
wow.
Yeah, so we had a family friend who owned a body shop, and he went and bought a shell of a stolen Cadillac, and I took all the good parts off of our car and put it on the car and made my mom a new car. I was a freshman in high school.
So you're 18, you're 16, 15, whatever freshman is.
15.
Yeah, 15. Mm-hmm. And you're rebuilding an entire Cadillac?
An entire Cadillac.
That sounds like a Johnny Cash song. Remember the Johnny Cash song that he wrote back in the 50s? Yeah.
Yeah.
So did you know anything about body work, or did you learn? Wow.
Nothing. So, but by the time we got to the end of that, the owner there decided that he would keep me on full time and just, so I went to school half a day and went to work half a day all the way through my high school career. So that's how I got started in body shop.
How long did it take you to rebuild the whole Cadillac?
I was at it for about 2.5 months.
Man.
After school.
And then it turned into a job?
And then it turned into a job.
And then a career?
And then a career.
How long did you do that?
I did that for 15 years.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. When I graduated high school, I thought that because I'd been working so long, and I was pulling in a steady paycheck that I didn't need a college career. Yeah. I mean, I had a career already.
Already making money. Why don't you go to college?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of why nots to it, but that was my thinking as a young kid, and so that's the path I took.
Yeah, so you stayed there in your 30s then.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, till 33. Actually.
Let's go back to when you first served the Lord. Tell us about your church experience as a child with your parents, and kind of what you went through before you get to the, how God rescued you. Tell us a little bit about where you came from.
Okay. Well, my story starts fairly early, and that's the part that I remember the most is, my dad was an alcoholic, and so my parents divorced at a very early age for me, and so they separated, and I would actually go to my dad's every other weekend. Yeah. He got shared custody, so we would go to his house every other weekend.
How old were you when your parents divorced?
5.
Oh wow, you were young.
Yeah, I was young. So, my brothers and I would go every other weekend to his house and stay with him, and he would always always take us to church on Sunday.
Yeah.
There was a little country church that was literally right across the yard from where I grew up.
Yeah. What kind of church was it?
It was a little Southern Baptist church.
Praise the Lord for the Baptist, man. There's a Baptist church on every corner.
Every corner and stuck in the woods a lot.
Amen.
So that little church was my church home for my childhood.
Yeah.
So, my dad, a couple of years into it, he actually quit drinking, and he continued to take us to church and started really turning his life around. Do we wish he could have done it a lot sooner?
Sure.
Absolutely. But that's not how the cards fell for us. So, he made sure that every Sunday that we were there, that he had us in the church house. And then I would, other weekends, I would be at home with my mom, and there were Seventh-day Adventists, and they had us in church pretty much every Saturday.
Yeah.
So we were a all weekend church family.
You're a Seventh-day Adventist on Saturday and Baptist on Sunday, huh?
That's right.
So your stepdad was Seventh-day?
My stepdad was Seventh-day Adventist.
Got it.
Yeah. So we got a lot of church when we were young.
Yeah.
Definitely, I would say we didn't have too many excuses to not know right from wrong.
Yeah.
So it was a blessing. My dad, he started out in children's ministry with us because it was a small church.
Yeah.
We kids, along with my three cousins that lived on the property with us, we moved up to youth.
Yeah.
He did youth.
Yeah.
Then we moved up to adults, and he started leading music on Sunday mornings. So, I owe a lot to my dad, and he's taken a journey with his kids in their growth and development.
Did he remarry?
He did remarry.
Yeah.
They have been married almost, I guess, probably about 30 years.
Oh, wow. And your
So
mom's still married to your stepdad?
he passed away in February due to COVID, so she is now single. Yeah.
Wow.
So she's a widow.
So you were close to both your dad and your stepdad?
Very close. Yes, they were very instrumental and always plugged into making sure that I was raised.
Yeah. So you had a great foundation, at least spiritually, even though your parents were divorced. They didn't ignore your spiritual needs, huh?
Yeah, thank God.
Yeah.
Absolutely. They made sure that I had that.
Yeah. Which would pay dividends later on when you grew up and kind of went your own way. Tell us about that. What kind of led you away from the Lord?
Well, as a freshman in high school, as I told you, I was my birthday fell in September.
Yeah.
So back then in school in Texas, if your birthday fell after the school year started, you had to wait till the next school year.
Right.
Well, my birthday literally fell just a couple of days after the school year started, so I missed it by just a couple of days.
So you got booted for a year behind, basically.
I was always a year behind until it come time for me to get my driver's license, and then I happened to be a year ahead of everybody.
Yeah.
So out of all my friends, I was the first one to get my driver's license and the first one to get a vehicle.
Yeah.
And I gained a lot of popularity magically.
I bet, man. Especially you're working at a body shop, huh?
Yeah. So it was. I went through that that season of my life, and as a kid in high school and starting to have a lot of friends, I was starting to be exposed to a lot of peer pressure that I had really never experienced before because we lived kind of a little bit of a, I wouldn't call it a sheltered life, but we did live a life in where we just didn't mix much with outside influences like that. Yeah. But I did find some friends. We started going out on weekends, and I found drugs through my friends.
Was it like at a nightclub, or where did y'all go to party? Or bars?
Well, in East Texas, you don't really go to nightclubs. You sit in the middle of parking lots, and you chance it and hope you don't get caught.
And you bring your own party?
And you bring your own party, or you'll sit in the woods in the middle of a pasture somewhere trespassing. And
right. How'd you find drugs in the middle of the woods?
Well, we've got 30 or 40 people there, in parties, they would always show up.
Somebody
would show up with it.
Yeah.
And so it started out for me with marijuana.
Yeah.
Didn't Didn't really think a whole lot of it. My plan actually, when I started doing drugs, my plan was, and I'm pretty sure it's been said a lot in many people's lives, but my plan was, I'm going to party till it's time to grow up.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to turn the switch off and grow up.
Yeah.
So I partied through high school. Got out of high school, I was making fairly decent money because, as I stated before, I was working in a body shop. So at that point,
Pretty good pay when you're a body shop expert.
not bad for a senior in high school.
Yeah.
As an adult who was trying to make it independently, it wasn't that great, but it was real good for a senior in high school. I didn't quite make that correlation that early in life.
Yeah.
So I stuck with the body shop as I graduated high school.
Yeah.
The body shop, come to find out, was actually a really good haven and a really good resource to further my drug addiction.
Really?
It just seems like that it's a predominantly drug abusive career.
Yeah.
So I escalated from marijuana to cocaine to ecstasy and to methamphetamines. And that path lasted all the way to 2008.
So how many years is that?
That was about 13, 15 years.
So you went on a 13 or more year journey with drug addiction.
With drug addiction,
Wow.
yes.
Did you get married along the way in those 13 years?
I did.
Yeah.
Actually married with 2 children.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, they were drugged through that that portion of my life with me.
Yeah.
So
you're still working. You're like a functional drug addict then.
Very much so functioning.
Wow.
And so I would go to work every day.
Yeah.
I would make my money, and the only issue was that financially I couldn't separate the two.
Yeah. How did you afford a drug addiction and a family?
I didn't.
Oh, you didn't?
No.
I see.
So what ended up happening was, as time goes on, we had lost 2 houses.
Yeah.
We had lost 3 cars.
Yeah.
And my wife and I had been through multiple separations and almost divorces.
And 2 little girls now, too. Huh?
With 2 little girls.
Wow.
A really self-centered portion of my life, and I ended up actually being sort of an influence of my wife starting drugs as well.
Really?
It's something about drug addicts. We just don't want to do things alone.
Yeah.
We always want to drag somebody else into our misery.
Sure.
And she, as well as my kids, they were drug into that misery with me.
And y'all were still in East Texas?
We were still in East
time?
Texas, yes. Yeah. Yes, we had a little bitty house out in a lakeside community where we were living, and it was a little 1-bedroom home.
Yeah.
And we were living there, and we stayed there for quite a while, and actually had to move out of it at one point due to my addiction, and move in with my brother and live with my brother for about 2 or 3 years because we couldn't afford the bills.
Yeah.
So, we moved in with my brother so that we could live a lot cheaper, and I could continue to fund my
Did your brother
drug
know
addiction.
you were struggling with drug addiction?
Not at all.
He didn't know. You were able to hide it. Wow.
I was able to hide it from my brother, and for the most part, even from my parents.
Wow.
My parents never really understood the magnitude of my addiction.
Yeah.
It went on for quite a long time.
Yeah. 13 to 15 years is a long time to be strung out on addiction, and you're alone.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, it was a hard portion of my life. It was the really dark places, and so 2008, August of 2008, I was literally walking to the lake, and I had a 5-gallon jug in my hand.
Yeah.
I was going to the lake to actually pull up water out of the lake into that 5-gallon jug so I could take it back to the house because I didn't pay the bills, and the water and electricity and everything was shut off in the house, but we were still living in it. So the only way I could think to flush toilets for my girls was to bring water and to bail water up the hill from the lake.
How far from the lake were you?
It's about 150 yards.
Yeah.
So on my walk down there in 2008, it was actually August of 2008, mid-path, I was stopped dead in my tracks.
Yeah.
And I came to this understanding that my life had to turn around.
Yeah.
I could not keep doing this to my wife and children. Yeah. They could not keep living in a home with no power, no electricity. You know, we're on the verge of losing yet our third home. Yeah. I just could not continue to raise my children and support my wife in that kind of environment. So I made the decision to change careers.
Yeah.
Really? At that point, that's what I thought my saving grace was going to be.
Yeah.
Is I'll just change careers. I'll go to a career that pays better money. I can afford my bills at that point.
Yeah.
And just so happens that pretty much any career I go into, I'm going to have to pass a drug test.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go ahead and quit doing drugs, and I'm going to change my career. And that's what I did.
Yeah. You just quit cold turkey with no help?
No help. No help. And it was a rough transition.
I bet.
It was a very hard transition.
At that time, you were still taking all four of those drugs, or just had you narrowed it down to one?
No, I was still very much involved in all those drugs.
The whole cocktail of them.
Mm-hmm. Man. So I was at this place where really, you know, that's what I thought I needed to do.
Sure.
You know, I'm not making enough money. I just need to make more money.
Yeah.
You know, and that'll fix everything. So, you know, I immediately quit the body shop. Mm-hmm. I immediately quit doing drugs. Yeah. And I started as an independent doing insurance work.
Yeah.
Getting that off the ground was not easy because I was working for myself instead of working for somebody else. Mm-hmm. And I did that for about 5 years.
Oh, wow.
Independently.
Still living in your little house.
Still living in a house, still financially struggling. Mm-hmm. You know, trying to make it and in a transition in a career all by myself and pretty much not knowing what I was doing, was just figuring it out.
Yeah.
And during that time, I would spend most of my time resenting my wife and children.
Really?
So there's this, I've come to understand that there is a very vast difference between sobriety and recovery. There's a big difference between sobriety and actual freedom.
Yeah.
And I spent 5 years walking in sobriety, and it was a huge struggle for me.
Yeah.
Every day I would wake up resenting my wife and kids because they were the reason that I had to quit.
Yeah.
They were the reason that I had to turn my life around. They were the reason why, in my eyes, I was struggling so bad financially and trying to make it, you know. And so that resentment manifested into a lot of verbal and mental abuse towards my wife and children. And they put up with that for 5 years straight.
So this is from 2008 to 2013.
2008
you
to
were
2000.
just struggling all along out there. Did you ever go back to church, or did you consider going back to church?
I did go back to church in 2012.
Oh, yeah?
There was a little girl who showed up on my doorstep.
Yeah.
And she knocked on my door, opened up the door, and she said, "Hey, I noticed you had toys in your front yard, so you must have children." And I was, well, that's a really odd, it's a really odd observance in today's world, but I kind of do have children, you know, how can I help you? And she said, "Well, I'm from the Lake of the Pines Baptist Church up here at the beginning of the community, and we're inviting people to Vacation Bible School, and I wanted to invite your children."
Oh, my gosh.
So my children went to Vacation Bible School. My oldest found Jesus.
Oh, boy.
So we went through that process of actually going and supporting my child through that process, because I knew. Because of my raising, I knew as a parent that, you know,
How old was
I've
she
got
at
to
the time?
support that. She was 6.
Oh, she was a little girl still.
She was still a little girl.
So your baby found Jesus, man.
Now, she found Jesus, and that was a huge deal to me.
Yeah.
But it wasn't big enough.
Yeah.
And so the things just kept going. The things that I was doing, the decisions I was making, the way I was treating my family was. Those things were still very much so prevalent.
Yeah.
I actually even resisted for a couple of months joining the church because I just wasn't quite there.
Yeah.
Where I was ready to follow in my child's footsteps.
Yeah.
And so I resisted for a little while.
Right.
During that time, we had a pastor there at Lake of the Pines Baptist Church who, for some reason, would not give up on me.
Yeah.
He would continue to pursue me until, I finally joined the church.
Yeah.
Started going to the church, became very, very heavily involved in the church through his mentorship as a pastor.
Yeah.
We literally became best friends.
Yeah.
And everywhere he went, I went.
Really?
He would take me to a lot of pastor conventions. He would take me to a lot of places that, I really would have never imagined myself being.
Yeah.
But he would never quit and he would never give up. And one morning, about 6 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday morning, he showed up at the house, and he said, "Come on, we're going somewhere." And I said, okay. And, he knew my home life. He knew what was going on. I really didn't ever hide anything from him as a pastor. And we went to this little town called Pittsburgh, and they were having a Celebrate Recovery step study there at a little Baptist church. And that's where he ended up taking me. We pulled up in the parking lot, and he looked at me, and he said, "Now, we're here for a particular purpose." And I said, okay. And he says, "We're here because I want to start a Celebrate Recovery in our church. I want you to lead it. And in order for you to lead that Celebrate Recovery, you're going to have to go through this step study.
Yeah.
It's a requirement."
He just volunteered you to lead it, huh?
He volunteered me to lead it.
What a great pastor.
What a great
I got a job
pastor.
for you, man.
Yeah. And so we went through that process.
Yeah.
First meeting, I came in, first lesson. I looked up at everybody and I just told them, "Hey, my name's Jimmy. I'm a grateful believer in Jesus Christ, and I'm here to get qualified to lead a Celebrate Recovery."
Right.
And they just kind of looked at me and smirked.
Yeah.
And I really kind of didn't understand what that was all about. And we went through this process of learning and understanding things about denial and where we was in our relationship with God and our addiction. The next week I came in, and it came time to introduce myself again, and just out of nowhere, my name is Jimmy Sharp. I'm a grateful believer in Jesus Christ, and I'm a drug addict.
Oh, wow.
I don't know where that came from.
Wow.
But
You got real.
It got real. And that group of men took me under their wing and walked me through that 12-step program. We went through a lot during those 12 steps. We went through an almost divorce.
Yeah.
My wife left me during that period.
Wow.
And it was just not an easy time in my life like what I thought it would be. I thought as everything changed and everything turned around, things would get easier, and they didn't. They even got a little bit more difficult.
Yeah.
And we'd go through that process, that 12-step process, and learning and understanding. And I'm here now to work on my drug addiction.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, part of the way through this 12-step program, things shift in my life, and now I'm here working on my marriage.
Yeah.
And then as things transition and keep going along, I've got my marriage back together, and now I'm trying to resolve things with my children and their mother.
Yeah.
Now I'm in a 12-step program working on my family. And it's all in the same 12-step period.
Man.
And it was overwhelming at times.
Yeah.
But there was so much freedom.
Yeah.
We was actually able to use Celebrate Recovery to rebuild our marriage, to put a foundation of principles into our marriage, and it actually helped us get to a place to where could forgive each other for a lot of things. There had been a lot of adultery in our life, just a lot of hurt in our marriage. And without going through some sort of process of learning how to forgive each other, we weren't ever going to make it. It was just going to continue to be this cycle. So she entered into a 12-step program herself, into a step study. She worked through a step study, and I worked through that, continued working through that step study, and we came out a lot stronger. As a family, as a marriage, and me as an individual. And I actually came out learning and understanding the difference between sobriety and freedom. You know, there's just this reality that sobriety is a day-to-day struggle. You know, and you just wake up a lot of times in the morning just trying to stay sober. And that's really where my focus was for so many years. Can I just make it through another day of being sober? And as I would continue to do that, it was just one struggle after another, just a daily battle.
Jimmy, the first 15 years, you were raised by a dad and a stepdad who both loved the Lord and brought you to church. But the next 15 years of your life, you left your faith and kind of did your own thing. How important do you think that foundation your parents gave you, even though it was a broken family, they brought you to church every Sunday? How important was that foundation later on in your life?
Critical. Life-saving.
Tell me about it.
I have learned through the years, through my recovery and my addiction and my parents. You know, I always, as a child, sat in church and listened to the preacher tell my parents, raise your child up in the way they should go.
Proverbs 22:7. Huh?
Proverbs 22:7. Raise up your child in the way they should go. And I always heard that so many times that as a child, I started to almost see it as a cliche. You know, so when I got into high school, that raising that was in me was not really important. Because I just kind of saw it all as an option and for a particular season in my life, and that wasn't the season to me.
You didn't see the value of it at that time.
I nowhere
but
near.
It would play a huge role.
A huge role. It would, you know, so as I've learned and I look back, and as I've told many people before, you know, there is a such thing as rock bottom. And I am solely convinced today that because of the foundation that was laid in me early as a child, because Jesus Christ was instilled in me early as a child, and those learnings and those disciplines were, my parents made every effort to put that into me. They made every effort to make sure that I was saved as a young child, that I had the presence of God walking with me. So when I turned away and when I went a different direction, you know, the reality was I always knew right from wrong. I always knew that it wasn't what was supposed to be for me. And that foundation that you have as a Christian, I've learned also plays a very integral role in your rock bottom. You know, and due to the presence of God in my life, my threshold in which I was willing to go past was a lot more shallow. The hole just wasn't nearly as deep.
So your rock bottom wasn't nearly what it could have been without that foundation?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I learned that as I started to find God again in recovery and walk through those things. I learned that if it wasn't for my parents instilling in me that at an early age, that there's no telling how far I would have gone. Because there was never really anything ever instilled in me as a kid that if I wouldn't have had God, what would that presence be in my life that turned me around?
And how deep would your rock bottom
and when
have
would
been?
how far would I have gone before it happened?
I think it's a good point that we just emphasize that parents who are watching right now, that the Sundays that they bring their children to church and the the building of that foundation, it may seem like it's not going to pay any dividends, but it'll carry them throughout the rest of their life. Even when their parents are no longer their main influence, that word of God and that presence of the Lord follows a child forever, like it did you.
It definitely followed me,
Yeah.
and I do believe that to be for every believer in Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
That your bottom's just not as deep as it would be without Him, and I owe that all to my parents.
Yeah.
My parents readily stood in the gap for me when I was active in addiction. They made sure I was raised up in the things of the Lord.
Yeah.
They also made sure that when I was active in addiction, even though they didn't know the magnitude,
Yeah.
or at least to my knowledge, they didn't.
Yeah.
Reality is some parents know more than we think.
Probably.
But to my knowledge, they didn't know the
Yeah.
depth and magnitude of
Yeah.
my addiction.
Right.
But they knew I was going through a rough period in my life.
Yeah.
And my mother and my father spent so much time on their knees
Yeah.
pleading for me.
Praying for you.
And, I'm convinced today that God honored that.
Yeah.
And I get to walk the way I walk today as a result of that teaching that was put in me early.
Right.
The foundation of Jesus Christ that was put in me early, the opportunity to find Him as my Lord and Savior
Right.
early in life. Those things were the key.
Yeah.
It wasn't anything I did.
Right.
At the end of the day, I'm an expert at getting myself in a lot of trouble.
Boy, that's so true. All of
And
us are.
as a teenager and even as a young adult, I was just really convinced that I had a better grip on life than what I really did.
Yeah.
And I also believe that, I could do this a different way than my parents and show them that
Right.
I can do this all on my own. It just didn't work out that way.
So that 12-week step study led to you reconnecting with Jesus, led to healing in your marriage, and opening up doors for ministry for you. When you finished that, did you go back to your home church and start a Celebrate Recovery?
Absolutely. We went back and we actually took about 8 months of working through building a foundation for Celebrate Recovery within the church.
Yeah.
And we actually built a Celebrate Recovery from scratch. I led it for 5 years before
wow.
letting go of it and moving and relocating to South
So
Louisiana.
you stayed there until you came to Louisiana then?
Correct.
Leading Celebrate Recovery?
Correct.
Wow.
Yes.
How's your marriage today? How's your family life and those traumas of the first few months of transition? God's healed most of that in your life.
Our family is as well as could be expected.
Yeah.
I would never sit here and say we're perfect.
Yeah.
But we are definitely growing.
Yeah.
Still today.
Yeah.
My wife has made a lot of progress. So have I as parents.
Yeah.
Our children are coming along well.
Yeah. And how old are you girls now?
I have one that is 19 and one that is fixing to turn 18.
Wow.
Yeah, the one that's 19 is about to turn 20. So
Yeah. And she just got married.
just got married, and
Yeah.
she has a little baby, 9 months old now, and
Yeah.
her name's Katie, and
Yeah.
she's the apple of our eye.
How in love are you with Katie?
Head over heels.
Right.
Head over
What is it
heels.
about grandchildren, man?
I do not know.
They're magical. I
That
don't know
yes,
what it is.
God does something special in grandchildren.
Yeah.
And my children, especially my oldest,
Yeah.
she gets to watch it, and it's kind of humorous because sometimes she has a few resentments that
Yeah.
Katie gets treatment that she didn't get when she
Hey,
was.
you were never this good to me.
Never. I hear that all the time. time. Hey, Dad, you never.
Yeah.
Dad, it wasn't like that when I was a kid.
I know.
And I don't really have a good explanation for it.
None. Like, hey, I'm sorry. I'm a better person now.
Yeah, I really just don't know how to explain it. But
Yeah.
she is definitely special to me. And it's, as I've stated before, she. I'd hope she was going to be a boy.
Yeah.
I would love to have a grandson in my life.
Yeah.
But the reality is, she's a girl, and that's a good thing. You know, I'm under the deep conviction that the girls that have been placed in my life are there for a particular purpose.
Absolutely, man.
And it's to keep me humble.
Yeah.
They keep me in line.
And I see your girls serving, especially I saw Emma yesterday serving in the nursery here at church, and you've raised some wonderful, wonderful children. You and Tabitha have recovered from your trauma, but your girls look like they've been raised in a stable, healthy, beautiful Christian home. It's amazing how God redeems us, isn't it?
It is. And really all I could do was lay the foundation.
Yeah.
You know, as that foundation was laid for me, that's really all I can do for my children is lay the foundation. And it does my heart good to see my children walking in the ways of the Lord. And it's just, you know, serving and doing the things they do.
Yeah.
It doesn't put a lot of validity in me as a man.
Yeah.
But it puts a lot of validity in my God.
Yeah.
You know, because like I said, you know, I'm an expert at messing things up.
Yeah.
And I really needed a lot of help raising my children.
Yeah.
And that came from Jesus Christ himself. And so I give him all the credit for my children.
How long have you been clean and sober?
I have been clean and sober since 2008, August of 2008.
Wow.
I did manage to, okay, let me rephrase that.
Yeah.
I've been sober since 2008.
Yeah.
I have been free since 2012.
Wow.
And
Preach it, brother.
That's a walk I will continue to walk.
Yeah.
Is in freedom. Some days I mistakenly do things that jeopardize it.
Yeah.
But I know that I can go straight to God, repent of those things, and turn my life around one more time in small steps.
His grace is sufficient.
His grace is definitely sufficient, and it plays a huge role in my life because I need it daily.
So just a few years ago, you were in East Texas, leading Celebrate Recovery, building your business, and now here you are in Slidell, Louisiana. Tell us how you got from East Texas to Slidell.
Well, that is a conversation, and that has just marveled me myself.
Really?
Yes, because in order for us to really understand the context of it, you got to kind of understand the business I'm in. Yeah. I work from home, so literally when they asked me to move down here close to my team, I could have moved anywhere. Yeah. And I did not have a destination in mind. They just said, you got to get closer.
Like somewhere in Louisiana?
Somewhere in Louisiana. You got to get there.
Pretty big state.
Pretty big state.
Yeah.
And we spent a year searching and hunting and trying to figure out where we were going to move to. Mm-hmm. We came down here and we looked all the way from Franklinton all the way over to Baton Rouge. Yeah. We looked some in Lafayette. Yeah. We just looked all over the place. Yeah. We even looked some in Mississippi, trying to figure out where that place is at. Yeah. Prior to us actually moving, I was in a process of actually really trying to understand my faith.
Okay.
And really trying to dig in a lot deeper.
Gotcha.
And I was actually came here with the intentions of almost starting from square one again, and really trying to figure out where God wants me.
Yeah.
So we were looking at different churches. We had decided that we may or may not actually stay with the Baptist church. Yeah. We may actually make some changes along those lines. Mm-hmm. It was just all about what God was going to do. Yeah. So we spent a year trying to figure it out on our own, and we were getting nowhere. Yeah. So I asked my wife, I was like, how are we ever going to figure this out? Yeah. There's just too many options, and she was lost, I was lost, and so we started just talking about church. Yeah. And that became the topic of our conversation is, okay, what do you think we're going to do about a church?
Yeah.
And so we literally started looking around and searching in the internet and looking for a church.
And you're still in East Texas?
We're still in East Texas.
Got it.
A year away from moving.
Gotcha.
And so we're searching through, and we found Journey Fellowship Church online.
Yeah.
And we started watching Journey Fellowship online on Sunday mornings from East Texas.
Really?
And we attended Journey Fellowship Church online for about 6 months
Get outta
before
here.
we ever made the move here.
Yeah.
And during that process, we kept watching it, and I looked at my wife one Sunday morning, and I was like, this is our church.
Yeah.
And she goes, are you sure? And I'm like, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm sure. This is our church, without a shadow of a doubt. And she says, okay, so now what?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, we find a house close by.
Wow.
And that's what we did. So God gave us a church.
Yeah.
And then we built our life
Man.
in the proximity of the church.
Yeah.
So we moved to Lacombe, and we've got a house there.
Yeah.
And that's where we've been living ever since. But we owe our location to the guidance of God, and He led
Absolutely.
us to Journey,
Yeah.
and therefore we built our house.
Did you
and built our
connect
family.
Did you connect with Pastor Al, our online campus pastor, while you were attending online?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Pastor Al and I actually developed a pretty good relationship via online.
Really?
We would talk and text on a regular basis.
Yeah.
He was actually there the day we moved in to help us carry our heavy couches up the stairs. Because we didn't realize when we were moving to Louisiana that all the houses are up in the air.
They're all off the ground there.
Yeah, and we had some of the heaviest furniture known to mankind.
Hey, you're Texas. Everything's big in Texas now.
Everything's big in Texas and heavy.
Yeah.
And it was still big and heavy when it came to
It's
Louisiana.
even heavier because you had to go upstairs with it.
Yeah, so he was there the day that we moved in to help us get all that
Man.
stuff upstairs. We
What
had
a
a really
campus
good
pastor.
we had a really good meeting with him, and he has been he's been a very integral part
Yeah.
of my life and my recovery.
Wow.
So we love Pastor Al to death.
He's
And-
amazing.
and it's-
So you got right involved, and you joined his Celebrate Recovery team quickly?
Yeah, pretty much immediately.
Yeah.
Immediately we came in and made ourselves at home, and just working through the process of turning this into our family.
Yeah.
I really didn't serve a lot in the very beginning.
Yeah.
I just kind of wanted to just sit back and get a good foundation underneath me, and kind of have more of a church home before
Yeah.
I started doing a lot of serving and volunteering. But as time went on, he slowly continued to encourage me and ask me to become more and more involved,
Yeah.
to the point to where I'm back involved in leading today,
Yeah. And now you're one of his main leaders for CR.
and blessed for it.
Yeah. Yeah. And you recently led a group down to the mission, I understand, right?
Yes, we are going down to the mission the last Friday of every month.
Yeah.
And I was able to actually go 2 months ago and lead the group,
Yeah.
as well as give a message.
Yeah.
And that was a huge opportunity for me to be able to actually stand up and
Yeah.
in a pulpit and deliver the word of God.
Amen.
To,
What a privilege.
to some people that are just as special as I am. It's just the world doesn't see them that way.
Amen.
And so it's definitely a blessing. I get to do it again this Friday.
Oh, exciting.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
So we're going to go back down again this Friday, and I get to bring the word again. And
Jimmy, talk for a few minutes. If there's somebody watching today who's going through an addiction, you've listed all your addictions, but somebody who's watching and their addiction is still real, how can they find help? What do they need to do?
first of all, find Jesus.
Yeah.
Quickly as possible, and know and understand that He has resources, that He has put in place for each of us. One of those resources is indeed Celebrate Recovery.
Yeah.
I am a very firm believer in the process,
Yeah.
because I'm a product of the process.
Yeah.
And we have that Celebrate Recovery available here at Journey Fellowship Church every Monday night at 6:30.
Yeah.
And we are always looking forward and anticipating an addition to the family every week. So this is not a closed off group. This is a group that looks forward to seeing people that are struggling with their hurts, habits, and hang-ups, and walking through that in their life with them day by day. And that's kind of what our Celebrate Recovery is about. It's just that community of grace and that forever family that we have together. And it is truly something special. We see a lot of that, but also bleeding over into Sundays, where a lot of our Celebrate Recovery people are getting to a place in their walk where they're showing up on Sunday mornings and also serving in church
leading.
life.
That's right.
Which is huge. So I would say that if there is somebody out there that is struggling with addiction or any hurts, habits, or hang-ups, that they would reach out to us on a Monday night through Celebrate Recovery. And definitely, and if you can't bring up the courage to come on a Monday night, start with a Sunday morning.
Right.
That path has been successful.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we would definitely embrace anybody who would want to come in and join us.
As we're wrapping this up, let's talk a little bit about your dad and your mom. Your dad's still strong in his faith in the church where you grew up?
My dad still leads music in that same little Baptist church.
How old is your dad?
My dad is in his mid 60s. He's 65 now,
God
and he's very much so still active.
Man, still leading worship.
Still leading worship.
God bless him.
And I think he will probably do that till the day the Lord calls him home.
Wow.
Mom is still active in the Adventist church. She actually lives in that community out there. So she's still active there as well. And my parents are, like I said, they're just godly people. And they did the absolute best with what they had in the season that they had trying to raise me. And the fact that they made sure that I had Jesus.
What do you and your family, you and your wife and kids, do for fun? Like travel, play. What is your hobby?
My hobby's fishing.
Yeah?
Yeah, that's not my family's hobby, but that's my hobby.
That's yours?
That's definitely my hobby.
Now you live right on the water, don't you?
Yes.
Yes. You fish off your back dock?
Yes.
Yeah, that's
well,
pretty sweet, man.
I'm a water rat.
Pretty
so
sweet, yeah.
It's we had to get close to water, and that was what we found in Lacombe. So I love to fish, and I do that quite often.
Nice.
The wife, she doesn't really have a whole lot of hobbies. She just, she works a lot and listens to music a lot. So I guess that's her hobby.
You guys have a favorite vacation destination?
Home.
Oh,
East
you like
Texas.
going home?
Yes, I've got an Airbnb at home in East Texas. And we go back there to be with family. And that is about as best of a vacation as we can come up with at this time is to
East
go
Texas
home.
is paradise, man.
We love it there.
It's beautiful. Absolutely.
It'll always be a part of us.
You ever go back home to go to your dad's church?
Yes, I was actually there last Sunday.
No way.
Yes, I was.
I bet he was loving that.
Oh, he ate it up. The whole family went back for the weekend.
Oh, gosh,
and so we made sure that we went to the Baptist church with Dad last Sunday, and the family and the grandbaby, and so his great grandbaby was there as well.
Oh my gosh, I know he was in heaven, man.
Oh, he was tickled to death to have us there. It's still, even at this stage in my life, it is still very, very much so important to my father to see us in church houses. So, and that's just where he gets his joy.
So powerful.
It's just to watch us, show up to church somewhere.
Jimmy, I have enjoyed your story, man.
Well, I have definitely enjoyed being able to
what a great testimony.
Visit with you today.
I love how Jesus takes us right where we are. Even we've made so many bad choices, and he always gives us a second chance. And not only that, then he makes things better than we could have ever imagined. Here you are now, happily married, 2 adult daughters, a grandchild, a booming business. You got your health, you got a great ministry, and man, how God took what could have been a tragedy in your life and turned it into a beautiful testimony. That's the power of Jesus, man.
Amen.
He takes our mess and turns it into a message of hope and redemption. You know?
Absolutely.
And it's so evident in your life. You are a man who lives out the story of redemption.
Thank you for those kind words,
Well,
and hopefully,
they're all true, man.
hopefully we can continue on in the path that God has set for us.
And I love how God brought you here through the online campus, man. You guys watched for 6 months. You attended for 6 months on the online campus. I love how technology has changed the world, made it so small. You're living in East Texas, which is how many hours away?
6 hours away.
6 hours away, and you were at church every Sunday here at Journey.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
It is a testament to where we are with technology today.
Yeah,
It's
right.
also a testament to the fact that our God knows no boundaries.
I know, right?
And to lead us here to Journey has
Yeah.
been one of the
Yeah.
biggest blessings.
I feel like I've known you for my whole life, even though we only been together for a couple of years. How long have you been in Slidell?
We've been here for going on 3 years. 3 years in November.
So we've been together 3 years, but it feels like it's been 30.
Yeah.
Because I think when you connect on that spiritual level, man, it's like family. But it's only been 3 years, but it's still very, very sweet.
Yeah, and it is a blessing that
Yeah.
I have been able to connect with the majority of the pastors here.
Yeah.
Each pastor here at Journey
Yeah.
plays a special role in my life.
That's good to hear, man.
You
That's so
know,
good to hear.
whether it's the youth pastor helping me parent my children.
I know. Isn't he great? I love Andy, man. He's such a
Andy
good-
is awesome.
He's so good.
He's always somebody that I can go to when I'm having teenage trouble.
There's only one thing I don't like about Andy. He's an Alabama Crimson Tide fan. So I'm trying to help him get past that addiction.
God's pretty powerful. There's still hope.
Andy's amazing. Al is amazing. Tanya, Ken, Mike, all our pastors, man, are such a loving pastoral.
It's a beautiful
men
staff.
and women. Yeah.
Yes.
Right. And thank you for adding your value. You and your family, man, add so much to our church. You guys believe and pray and serve and give so much, and we're just grateful that the Lord brought you to us.
And we're even more grateful.
Well, I've enjoyed the conversation so much. Jimmy, we're going to wrap this up today. I'm honored that you would join us on the podcast. My guest has been Jimmy Sharp, who is one of our leaders at Celebrate Recovery, and he and his family are actively involved here at Journey, and they're just a joy to be with. If you're watching today and you're struggling with an addiction and you need help, I want you to know that Jesus Christ is your answer, and we want to welcome you to come just like you are. In fact, come on a Sunday morning. You know, we welcome people who are not perfect. In fact, we are a church for people who are not perfect. We want you to bring your situation to the Lord. So if you're living locally here on the North Shore or in Slidell, you get driving directions at jf.church. You can also download the Journey Fellowship Church app. Go to your app store, type in Journey Fellowship Church, download the app. There's messages from past sermons. There's small groups you can get connected with. You can find driving directions. All those things at jf.church are on the Journey app. But we'd love for you to come visit us this Sunday. 2 services, 8:30 a.m. and 10 a.m. is our current format. But wherever you are, if you're watching online, maybe you live away, join us on the online campus. Again, jf.church are on the Journey app. For Journey Fellowship Church, I'm Doug McAllister, and this has been Stories I Didn't Tell Last Sunday.